Hello everybody, welcome to IGCSE Biology. This might be the first video you've seen. This is a little webcast going through some of the theory behind the unit we're going to be studying. Many of the images that are on my website on this presentation have come from Google and the references can be found at the bottom of the web page that they're on. So whilst you're doing this video, what would be really useful to you is that you've got your revision, your coordinated science revision notes or your combined science revision notes that you can draw on and annotate whilst you're going through it. You'll also have to, while you're watching the video, kind of go backwards and forwards and pause the video and just go back to different parts when you need to get some more information. There will be periods in the video where the video will stop and you'll be asked a question. It's really important that you answer these questions fully so that I can gauge your understanding and what you've been doing throughout the video. Okay, so let's begin. So this is the respiratory system. You will be doing a lung dissection if you haven't done one already. And so you should already know a little bit about this. You've done perhaps lung dissections already, so should be pretty straightforward to you. So what you can see in this, in here is you've got the top of here, you've got the larynx or voice box. Obviously air that's coming into the lungs, okay, passes through here and causes the cords or the vocal cords that are in there to vibrate, which produces sound. You then, below the larynx, you've got your trachea. Okay, now you can see the trachea, it's lined with C-shaped rings of cartilage. Okay, and they're there to stop that kind of trachea from collapsing when you inhale. So it stops the lining of the trachea from sticking together when you inhale as the pressure drops. Then what happens is they split up into the two bronchus, which are these two dividing tubes here. And further going down into the lungs, they split into the bronchioles, okay, which are these extensions here, much smaller. At the end of the bronchioles, you have your alveolus tissue, which is the tissue that's in here. Now, all this tissue that you can see here is a combination of alveolus and capillaries. That's why it's so red, because it's got lots of capillaries with lots of blood vessels. With lots of red blood cells traveling through. So this is kind of like the site of gas exchange. Okay. So if we're looking at a close-up of what's in the alveolus, you'd find you've got this alveolus tissue, which is massively increasing the surface area, which is kind of what the alveolus tissue is, like a big balloon or lots and lots of balloons in your lungs to increase the surface area. So when you inhale, air is going to rush into these areas, okay? And what's going to happen is oxygen is going to diffuse across from inside here to inside here. So the red blood cells are going to be coming past, picking up that oxygen, okay? The blood is also going to be dropping carbon dioxide off, and that's going to be diffusing back into the alveoli tissue where it will be exhaled and go back out again, okay? The blood cells are going to very quickly not very quickly, but we're going to move away from the alveolus, taking that oxygen with them. So that's really important in maintaining that concentration gradient, so that you've always got a higher concentration of O2 here than oxygen that's in the blood. Okay, so oxygen then can move by diffusion, remember, from a high concentration to a low concentration. Okay, the same with carbon dioxide. It has to move from the area of high concentration, which is the blood, to the low concentration in the alveoli tissue. So the key features of our respiratory surfaces that we can see here, okay, we've got this really large surface area, okay, these alveoli air sacs. We've got a really good blood supply coming from the capillaries, which are kind of intertwined around the alveoli. And we've got a moist surface, so the surface of this lining here is very moist. You can see this blue lining. All right, it's quite wet to allow the diffusion of gases, so oxygen can diffuse into it and the CO2 can diffuse out of it. Okay, that speeds up the process of diffusion. And you've also got a really, really thin distance. So you can see here the alveoli tissue is only one cell across, and this is also only one cell thick, the wall of the capillary. So it's a very short distance between in here and in here, which means its diffusion is going to happen much more quickly. Okay, moving on from that, okay, we're looking at now at how we might be able to test for whether to compare inhaled and exhaled air. Okay, so you can see this is kind of a setup. This in here, you might already recognize this as being lime water. Now, if you remember right, lime water, when you breathe into it, turns milky or cloudy, okay, if carbon dioxide is present, okay? So keep that in mind. All right, now this is a setup to compare inhaled air and exhaled air. So you've got a mouthpiece in the middle. You've got it kind of connected with two conical flasks filled with lime water. Now, because of the setup, the way the flasks are arranged with this tube like this and this tube like this, as you inhale, obviously the air can't come from this side because it's blocked by liquid. So air comes in via this side. So air, and when you inhale through this bit, if you put your mouth on here and inhale, air is going to be sucked in through here, through this lime water, up here. The bubbles will bubble up. Okay, you'll notice bubbles, and it will come up here and into your mouth. Okay, then when you exhale out of this, you will exhale, the air will go back down. Okay, and the air will go down this way into this lime water, not into this lime water, into here, and this will begin bubbling as you breathe out. Okay, and then the gas, as it escapes, will come up through the flask and come out this end. So that's just a description of how that works. Now, you're going to do this experiment in class, so I don't want to give away what actually happens, but you can just sort of think round about now what you think the result of that experiment would be when you did that. What would happen to this lime water, and what would happen to this lime water? So when you inhale, what would happen to the lime water in here? Would it go cloudy? And when you exhale, what would happen to the lime water in here? Would that go cloudy? Okay, and what would that mean in terms of the results of that experiment? Okay. All right, so at some part, and again, you're also going to be looking at smoking, all right, and what smoking does to our bodies. You'll see a demonstration, okay, in the fume cupboard in Mr. Graham's room that'll be set up similar to this, where you'll have a flask of lime water, okay, and you'll have a flask of universal indicator. You'll have a cigarette which will burn on one end, and this end here will be connected to a pump. And what will happen, okay, is smoke will be pulled through the lime water, okay, it will also be pulled through the universal indicator, pulled through the lime water, okay, and there might be some sort of reaction which happens between those two. So again, what do you think will happen to the universal indicator? What color will it change from? Remember, green is neutral, okay? Will it change to being more acidic, i.e. go red, or will it change to go be more blue, i.e. alkaline? What will happen to the lime water, okay? And what will that mean, okay? So think about those terms, think about these things before we do it. Okay, cigarette smoke, okay, we know can be quite dangerous, all right? Now, before we actually discuss the effects of cigarette smoke, I'd like to just talk about what happens in our trachea. So your trachea, this will be the lumen or the hole that goes through your trachea, which is the part of your windpipe. The tracheal walls are lined with what we call cilia, which are little hairs, okay? The cells that they're attached to are called epithelium, okay? And between these epithelial cells, you have other cells called goblet cells, which produce something called mucus, okay? So a normal person who doesn't smoke, okay, what happens is, you can see here a bit of a close-up, is that the mucus is released from these goblet cells and it traps dust and dirt, which you might inhale, Okay, and what will then happen is these cilia will actually waft backwards and forwards as you breathe in and out. And as you breathe out, they will waft upwards towards the mouth and move the cilia, move the mucus and the trapped dust and dirt towards your mouth. Okay, which will then go back to your mouth, and you usually swallow it. This image here is really cool because this was taken with a scanning electron microscope, which takes a sort of high resolution image of the surface of these cells. So you can see these actual hairs, these projections, very, very high resolution. So this is the epithelium here. This is the cilia in that epithelium. You can't see any goblet cells here, but you can see the epithelium. Now, what do you think would happen? Okay, question will pop up now. What do you think will happen when cigarette smoke, which is very, very hot, is inhaled? What do you think will happen to the cilia, and what effect will that have, okay, on the mucus that is trapping dust and dirt in here, and where will that mucus go? Okay. Here is a bit more of a close-up image of that. So you can see here, look, this is a control, so somebody who doesn't smoke. This image on the bottom right here shows somebody who does smoke. Now you can see the lining of the trachea on the inside. This is very furry with those cilia. This one is almost bare. Right, this diagram here shows a few more of the dangers of smoking. So we know that cigarette smoke has some very, very dangerous chemicals inside it. This one is called carbon monoxide. So you can see here that when we normally inhale, or if we inhale, we usually inhale oxygen. Now oxygen usually diffuses through the alveoli into the capillaries and binds with red blood cells. And the red blood cells then carry that oxygen around the body to where it's needed. However, when we smoke, we inhale a lot of carbon monoxide, okay, which is the formula CO. Now, CO then also diffuses into the blood, and instead of the oxygen binding with the red blood cells, we get the carbon monoxide binding with it, okay, and the red blood cells then go off with this carbon monoxide attached. Now, what that means is that red blood cell, instead of carrying oxygen away with it, it's going to carry the carbon monoxide, which is really, really, really serious because it means less oxygen is going to get to the tissues of your body. Now, carbon monoxide is present in exhaust fumes. Sometimes central heating systems, when they break, will emit carbon monoxide, which can leak into people's houses. One of the very dangerous things about carbon monoxide is it's a scentless gas, so you don't even know if it's actually if it's leaked or not. Okay, and what tends to happen when it has leaked into a house is that people will go to sleep at night there and simply just won't wake up from their sleep because they won't know it's happening, which is obviously very, very sad. So that's what we call carbon monoxide poisoning, and that happens, of course, when we smoke cigarettes, but to a lesser extent. Still very serious, and it obviously means that you won't be as fit. Okay, because your blood won't be able to carry as much oxygen around to the tissues. Sometimes also that smoke particles can irritate the air passages, which can lead to bronchitis and emphysema. Tar, which you can see here, this is tar in this glass here. This is the tar taken in by a smoker in 1 year. Okay, now this tar doesn't just stay in the lungs, it gets into the blood, it gets all around the body. Tar is a carcinogen, or it contains many chemicals, many of which are carcinogens, and so they can cause cancer. Okay, you can see here, this is a diagram of somebody a normal person, normal alveoli, and this is alveoli with emphysema. Now, generally what happens is that cigarette smoke can cause people who smoke. Basically, what happens is the walls of the air sacs become destroyed, which reduces the surface area. Now that happens because the smoke that you inhale affects white blood cells, which causes them to break down this tissue. Okay. And damage the alveoli. So it's actually your own body attacking itself. Now, this emphysema is literally unheard of it's only heard of in people who smoke. Okay, so it's actually a condition which did not arise until people started smoking. All right, which is obviously pretty crazy. Okay, so you can see here that this is a healthy human lung, which is it's got this pink texture. Now you'll have seen these when you've done dissections. And this is a smoker's lung, which has got this black tarry color. This has been damaged by the smoke. One thing I haven't discussed here is nicotine. Obviously, nicotine is the chemical which we find in cigarette smoke, which is highly addictive. Okay, it also causes, it's a stimulant, so it causes the heartbeat faster, and at the same time, it also makes your blood vessels narrower, okay, which can raise the blood pressure. Okay, now if that is continued, that can cause, raise the blood pressure, and it also causes long-term damage to the circulation in your body. Now, it's a very long video, okay, so thank you for watching, and well done.